like he was their dinner. Which probably was what was in their tiny brains. Hey, Renato said. They cocked their heads at him. Pick on someone as ugly as you. Wait, that didn't come out right.
For the Emperor!
The ravens cawed and rushed at him. A dropship flew overhead. He hoped they hadn't noticed him. The kid. Oh, right. The Gate of Heroes. Someone's idea of a joke, making the Skyship Docks a gated community. You needed a hero's sword to open it. And the kid was on the other side of the gate. Who let you through? Promise me you'll take the book to the rebels. Or I'm gonna steal your ship. I'm not taking that damn book anywhere. And neither are you.
Try and stop me, laughed the kid. I bet you don't even have a hero sword.
And with that, the kid hopped away. Had to hand it to the kid. He was an idiot, but he had guts. Where was Renato going to get a hero sword? could forge a hero sword here, but I'm going to need ore. I hope nobody minds if I use this stuff. A hero sword. QED. This is what he got for settling down and finding people to care about. The kid's mum had been a swell cook, and she'd laughed at Renado's jokes, even when he didn't know he'd made one. And then the Ravens had come to burn her. And she'd made him promise to protect the kid. But she never told him where the book was. Just the kid. He came up to a ledge. It was too far to jump. There'd been a bridge here before, hadn't there? And there was Peter, giggling at him. "How'd you get across?" he asked the kid. "Where'd you find a hook?" "I hopped," said the kid. Wise-ass kid. "Hey, look out behind you!" "Cute," said Renado. Ah, ravens. It was time to talk some sense into the kid. Just hook his way across the ledge and chase the kid down. Thing was, he hadn't used his hook since he'd retired. Damn it. Maybe if he meditated at that altar there, he'd remember his old skills. It was starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot, like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. Yeah. And there was the Farfarer. She was the fastest ship he'd ever known. She could do the Kestrel run in 12 furlongs. Oh, so the salesman had told him. And something told him the kid was about to walk into an ambush. "Stop!" he shouted. "I'm not giving you the book!" shouted the kid, and took off. "No! Peter!" But the kid ran for it, and a goggler nailed him with its eye-beam. The book was unburned. Next to it were the buckles from the kid's shoes, and a kid-sized pile of ashes. Damn it. Why hadn't he lied and told the kid he'd take the book to the rebels? The kid would be alive now. Really pissed off and betrayed, but alive. Oh, damn it. Renado picked up the book. He couldn't let the Empire have it now. He was going to have to get it out of there. He'd be a wanted man. Probably have to join the rebellion just to have a place to dock. Well, he'd hated home life anyway. What was the big deal about this book anyway? Maybe he should open it and find out. All that had been years ago. How many? The war was a blur, and now 3 Raven scout ships were chasing him.
Where are you running, rebel?
Cawed the Raven captain over the loudhailer. Renato could see them cranking up their out where he could find the pieces of the Sky Ripper, the legendary weapon that had exiled the lost gods. Surely a legendary weapon could win the final battle. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino had sent Renato a desperate message saying he had a brilliant scheme to save the rebellion. If Renato could only rescue him. Renato dived the Farfarer towards the abyss. As he felt the heat of the jet stream, the Raven ships peeled off, not stable enough to follow him down there. Now it was time to choose. Lapino or the Sky Ripper. Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lapino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? Oh, this really didn't have much in the way of safety features, did it? The Ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Renato hoped the people were just hiding. Renato's blood was up. He just needed to smash something. Odd that they never locked these things. Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Where had the mad rabbit got to? Renato felt like he was ready to learn new things. It was starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot, like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. Renato felt new powers ready to blossom within him, or something. missed his old skills. He welcomed them back like it was at a reunion.
That is how we do it, said Renato to himself.
Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The Ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia.
We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, He could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the Transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Bernardo had already let that armature slip away to save Lupino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that.
The core of the Sky Ripper? Lupino's excited. That's an actual thing that we could just go and get. You've been busy.
He sure had. Renato told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, and scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. Renato grinned. He had a very good feeling about this. It's beautiful here, thought Renato. He was thrilled to be back with his old war buddy. He'd missed the Mad Rabbit, but something was not quite right. Who needed bridges anyway? I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Renato. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. Where did that go to? Renato felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds, if you didn't count the ravens. Renato smelled sick animals and dying ones, but no healthy ones. And getting a bad feeling about this, Renato thought. Maybe Lapina was right. Maybe they should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here.
Kill the fox!
Caught the ravens. Nobody said they were original.
That had gone rather well, actually. As he held the radiant icosahedron, Renato felt queasy, like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides. It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Renato ached to get away from it. He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Renato ached to be rid of it.
Tell you what, said Lapino. I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost.
The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Renato. But what if Lapino got the core and then broke it, or lost it, or worse? Was Renato ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself. Lapino was a touchy rabbit. Renato knew that. You're brave, I know, Renato said. But this is what I was hired to do.
At least let me run ahead and warn the scientists you're coming.
So, Lapino was intent on being a hero, just like him. War made sensible men crazy for glory, and Lapino had never been sensible. But what was the harm? Lapino might well trip over a hornet's nest of ravens. But that was better than ravens lying in ambush, wasn't it? They finished the trip to the Nexus in silence. Renato had no sooner rescued his friend than he was putting him back in danger. "All right," he finally said as they landed. "Go." As Renato watched Lapino vanish on the horizon, he could feel nausea building in him. He felt ill. Could his knees really be aching this much? But how could he have handed the core off to Lapino? That was a recipe for disaster. Renato wondered if it wasn't cheaper to build bridges and stairs. Cool. Wish I could do that. Renato felt worse. All his joints were aching now. He'd been through beatings that felt better than this. So the core had a kind of poison that could harm you without even touching you. That's new. Well, it had power. The rebellion needed something with power. And how was this any worse than a sword wound? Well, a death by sword was sudden and fair. This was just squalid. A piecemeal death, like old age. Renato had given up in the Skyripper's armature to save his friend Lapino. But without its armature, Skyripper's core was a deadly poison. A crafting bench. Renato wondered what he could make with it. trusty old sword was always a little better when he sharpened it. He'd once met a pirate captain. He used hooks to get around his ship. What was his name again? Ooh, Renato hated warlocks. The way they stayed back and lobbed pain and death from a distance. Cowards. Really dangerous, effective cowards. Done beautifully. Where was a bard when you needed one? The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists everywhere. Bernardo found the mad rabbit cowering under a desk. The ravens, they must have known we were coming, said Lapino. How did you... Well, see, I was doing a card trick with my lucky deck, and I kind of bobbled the cards, so I went under the desk to gather them up, and boom! I guess we'll have to take the car straight to the secret base. The secret rebel base. Yes. They had engineers there. But wait. Calaveras, the sage in the mountains. Maybe he would know what to do with the naked core. The core was killing him. He needed help. The sage, Calaveras, had given him the maps to find the armature and the core. If anyone knew the true name of the Transcendent Emperor, if anyone knew how to assemble the Sky Ripper, Calaveras did. If anyone could heal Reynardo and render the core safe, at least to its bearer, surely it was he. The base of the mountain was the only safe place for a landing. He would have to continue on foot, muscles aching. Calaveras was a scholar, not a doctor. Could he really save Reynardo from the poison radiating from the lost god's eye he was so recklessly carrying? smashing things was fun.
Interrupted story time.
Of course, the lead raven.
Now I'll never find out how it ended.
Oh, this was not a fun way to die. Even if he survived. No one would write ballads about the fox whose knees ached forever, would they? Not unless he paid for it. And he hated paying for publicity. This is quite the view, he thought. It was chilling, walking through the living mountains. There was always noise up ahead. Insects, birds, the croak and flutter of ravens arranging ambushes. But close by, there was only the breeze and the trickle of melting snow. As if every living thing was holding its breath for his poisonous burden to move on. Renado's paws were getting numb. Calaveras really didn't want company, did he? Renado felt a little better. Huh? A lever? That was new. Most people still use doorknobs. Renado wasn't sure he should have rescued Lapino. He could have had the Sky Ripper. Now all he had was the core, and it was killing him. hoped his hook didn't break.
The core! Splendid! Croaked Calaveras. Where's the armature?
Right, I was kind of hoping you wouldn't need it.
No, I don't. It's just a professional interest. We've got much better prismatics than the old TE ever did.
So Calaveras was an arcane engineer. He fussed at the core all day. He wrapped it with silver chains, and in front of it, he placed a huge, round ruby, so that it looked like a monstrous, floating eye. So, what is it?
Yeah, I call it the Oculum. It's my very first death ray.
And it won't poison me?
Oh, no, it's completely safe now.
Anything I should watch out for?
Yeah, try to avoid pointing at any mirrors.
As he loaded the Oculum onto the Farfarer, Bernardo was a little concerned about Calaveras. People who were utterly sure of themselves, he had found, were either experts or horribly wrong. Or both. But Bernardo only needed to fire the Oculum once. He only needed to destroy one ship, the Emperor's ship, and the war was over. Bernardo plunged into the Imperial fleet. He felt the Oculum humming. He no longer felt sick. This was going to be fun. Or at least, it was going to be over. Bernardo resisted the temptation to fire the Oculum until the time came. He could sense its arcane energies yearning to escape the sage's wrappings. But it wasn't eating him alive. So that was a plus. He felt good about himself. He'd saved a friend, he'd helped the rebels, he'd relied on himself, but he'd listened to others. He felt like the right sort of hero. Wise, yet decisive. Calaveras had been so sure it would work. Maybe he could fire it just a few times. No harm in that, right? But only when he absolutely needed to. He wasn't that good. Yet. Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. Building these platforms was so expensive, they'd run out of budget for guardrails.
Can't we just agree to disagree? Said Renato. No?
Don't look down, he thought.
Like having the world's heaviest bowman right by his side.
Renado's arm was getting tired. The core was no longer eating at him, but he still felt weak. His stamina was shot. But he had the oculum. When the Raven swarmed him, it would sometimes fire its death ray. It seemed to be warming up, too, firing more and more often. Maybe he should let it cool off. He decided to stop using it entirely. Don't look down, he told himself. Don't look down. Odd. The oculum was still hot to the touch. He almost thought it was getting even hotter. Well, that was ridiculous, of course. Anyway, he'd only to fire it one more time, and then he could chuck the whole contraption into the abyss, and the Emperor's ship was now in range. Reynardo squinted. He could make out the line of ravens protecting the ship. Zenobia in front, conjuring. And on the deck, yes, that was his Imperial Majesty, pacing in his golden armor. Reynardo lined up his shot and fired. Caught in the beam, the ship burst into flames. The ravens and Zenobia exploded. The Emperor, too, exploded. Reynardo waited for the beam to stop, but it only got brighter, and the oculum hotter. Frantic, Reynardo pulled the oculum towards the abyss. The ruby burst into flames. The shiny metal casing glowed, then melted. That was good. Now the core could cool off, right? Reynardo ran. The blast incinerated him instantly, along with both fleets. The shockwave could be felt across all Erda. That winter, with neither Empire nor rebels to rule them, the islands slid into banditry. And so began the Second Age of Darkness. Okay, that was weird. He could have sworn he'd just died. Instead, he was on the Farfarer, sailing away from Ubar. And it was still burning. He'd fled burning Ubar years ago, hadn't he? And now he was back there. Had all those years fighting the Empire been nothing but a vision into the future? A useful vision if it was true. He'd learned something. The core was powerful, but dangerous if used improperly. He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning, and he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game-changer, but could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep, and then this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Renato wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon, but surely there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato could not help but feel a tinge of guilt. He'd left Lapino behind. He hoped the Mad Rabbit had somehow escaped the Ravens. He hoped they hadn't eaten him. If they had, he hoped they hadn't eaten him alive. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it?
Renato had a lot of crafting materials. Now all he needed was a crafting bench. Burning sword from the south was terrific for barbecuing sausages and ravens.
What
were these poles exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods?
Wallabies, he thought. Why did it have to be wallabies? The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the Lost Gods, thousands of thousands had died. But Renato had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one. Time to die, he thought. And it was. As for the gate, well, he could take her or leave her. Sorry, best I could do.
Every day he was getting better and better.